Good evening and welcome to Gunner Short. Gunner Short में आप सबका स्वागत है. Today we're going to get into the next edition of Casa Dialogues. How does the Iran war end? And to talk about all this, I have with me Brig Arun Sahgal and General Gautam Moorthy, and we'll shortly be joined by Brigadier Rumel Dahiya, right? And that's how it is. Today is the 15th day of the war. A fortnight has gone. Well, at one look, it might seem that there's no end to this war. But when you look at it beyond the scenes, it's possible that the whole thing might crumble and finish in a day or two or three or a week, or it'll stretch on. And there are a whole lot of possibilities in between. So without me wasting much ado, what I'd request all each of you sirs is to give out your vision as to how this war can end or will not end, and what are the end games which we are going to see, and the pathways which we're going to touch upon. It doesn't matter whether we don't have to be coincidental about it, because we don't know what the future beholds and where things are going to go, right? And a whole lot of a few ideas about how this war will uh, pan out or end will also inform us the range of options which are there ahead of us. Right, with this, I'd request, initially we'll talk for about 4 5 minutes your viewpoints, and then we'll go for a second round base, and I think we'll have some questions going. General Gautam Moorthy, sir, as usual, please take on and start off.
Good evening, General Shankar. Good evening, my fellow panelists, and good evening to the viewers. The topic today is, how does the Iran war end? Now, before we go there, I'd like to ask a polemic question. What does victory mean? Wars typically end when one side or the other wins. If you go back to the First World War, Second World War, it was all very clean cut. It was very clear, so and so is lost. 1971 is a classic example where the Pakistani forces in East Pakistan surrendered to India. Wars also end when both sides sort of exhaust themselves. There are no better options available than walking away and declaring victory, whatever that victory may be. You saw that in Vietnam, the US walked away, they declared victory and walked away. But then what happened to Vietnam? So there has been commentary on this war from both sides. The pro-Israeli, pro-US say that the Straits of Hormuz will be reopened at any time, and we have already won. And the other side that says this war is already a failure. The US and Israel have lost. They're being dragged into this, and it will take a long time. Now, the problem with all these commentaries are that they are not properly analyzing the war. Whatever you believe in, you want that to play out. So before the whole thing is discussed, before it plays out, you want it to play out, it's playing out in your mind, so you're putting it out as an analysis. But over here on this Casa Gunner Shot, we are not going to give you that picture. We are not going to say what it is. We are going to tell you how complex the situation is and how we look at it. Now, that does not, you see, if people who want Trump to be embarrassed or Trump to be, to be vindicated, to say that, look, he's a fantastic president and he's taken us to this great victory. Some people want the US and Israel to be humiliated. Okay, then you work backwards and say that this is analysis. But what is success? Right now, we have seen great tactical air superiority on the part of the US and Israel. Of course, there's no doubt that Iranian missiles have also gone through onto Israel and onto the Gulf states. But is this air superiority the same thing as a victory? It addresses only one aspect of the war. How long will it last? What will happen to this regime? What is the meaning of victory? What is victory to Israel? What is victory to America? What is victory for the regime? What is victory to the Iranian people? Now, if we understand this, we can go ahead and discuss what the end state would be like. With this very brief introduction, back to you, General Shankar, and we can take on what this victory to each side means in the next part of our discussion. Back to you.
Thanks a
Thank you.
lot, sir. With this, I request Brigadier Sehgal, sir, where do you see this war going? How do you see this ending in some form?
Okay.
Or whichever way it is. It's not. I'm
Oh,
not interested in who's going to win or lose, rather than
no.
seeing what are the pathways and where do we end. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, General Shankar. Thank you, General Moorthy, and good evening, Dahiya sir. Okay, so I am going to do it in two quick parts. I'll stick to my time slot. My first part is the state of play as we cover the second week of the war. The first fundamental point is the war is escalating. There is a degree of US frustration in the lack of objectives. The intensity of attacks are increasing, and there is a shift on the from the military oriented targets to more oil refineries, uh, civilian infrastructures, and all those elements which are important for the regime survival. uh, Iran is responding, but there is a discernible scaling down in their retaliation. uh, but the targets which the Iran are hitting are those targets which are central to prosecution of war by both Israelis and the Americans, which are air defense systems, communications, and electronic warfare hubs. So they have made some kind of a dent in it, but it's not been adequate. But one thing is certain is that the American forces have been pushed back, and there has to be, for every possible strike, there has to be a certain degree of refueling has to be done that reduces the payloads, and etc. Uh, Arab states have been are now fairly right in the center of this whole operation, and they are as much a target for the Iranians as much as the Americans and the Israelis are. And the central point over there is, as far as the Iranians are concerned, is concerned that they are key supporters of the war. They are hosting these forces. They're providing them resources, logistics, etc. To hence, in an all-out war in this nature, they are the targets. Okay, so what are the US aims? Fundamental aim is, I would say that at one level, US is confused. It is attempting to bulldoze Iran into submission. As long as the regime survives, the IRGC survives, the new leadership survives, the regime change construct of the Americans is not going to be easily possible. So the issue is, if this indiscriminate escalation carries on, there is a possibility of Iran attempting to going nuclear. And I'm saying it with all seriousness, is that 60% enriched uranium can always be increased to what, another 15 to 20%, and you can create a small kind of two or three deterrence systems, and that will be adequate. Which the next issue is, the longer the war lasts, the Arab states are going to become increasingly comfortable. We are already seeing this happening. The Arab states are talking to each other. They are trying to say that we are getting devastated in this thing. There's a huge economic loss that they're facing. It's not only Hormuz Strait. It is a fact is that their entire commercial centers, Bahrain, Abu Dhabi, we understand, are not only big buildings, etc., but they are also housing large number of international corporations operating from financial institutions. All those are now shifting away from them. The issue that is coming around in the American mindset is, which I can read from the statement which is being made, is that push hard, continue to push hard, but at some stage there has to be a certain degree of accommodation. Now, how do that accommodation takes place? What are the elements of that? How will the regime of the Iranian regime react? Are the issues that are are a point of concern. As far as Iran is concerned, is fighting an existential war. There's a large-scale damage to its military capability, infrastructure, decapitation of its leadership has taken place. But equal reality is that the IRGC leadership, as well as the clerics, are holding on. People, although were against the regime, are sort of rallying behind some sort of a flag. And at this particular point in time, they are not going to be inclined to come to the streets to dislodge the current the clerical leadership or the IRGC. So, in that sense, what is happening is that there is a lifeline for this regime that is becoming a more and more apparent, and the people are against it. The fact that they are also sending these Kurds and other elements to take over the Iranian territory are also elements which are forcing people to sort of go and support the national cause. So basically, that's a as far as intrinsic military capabilities are concerned, I mean, the assessments has been that it will be easily be pulverized. They will lose their capacities. Their missiles and drone systems will become lesser and lesser. That doesn't seem to be happening, and it appears that the kind of systems that they are trying to bring into the war are highly sophisticated. And there is a strategy which the Iranians, as far as I'm concerned, is following is they are doing precision strikes as against the mass strikes by the Americans. The troops on the ground is a consideration that is being thought about, that could create further complications, and that would lead to a much more prolonged war. But the sad reality is that under such conditions, as we have seen and studied during the Vietnam War, the Americans continue to commit reinforced failure after failure after failure, and try and believe that they can win victories. But I do not know which is going to go. So uh, the another element of interest right now is the Chinese and the Russians are coming more open and more blatant in their support. Some reports indicate a huge amount of equipment being brought in. It's actually a fact is the Baidu and other elements have been supplied. CS-152, those cruise missiles have been provided to the Iranians, and that ship, the surveillance ships of the Chinese, has been a great supporter to the Iranian cause. So, in this, I have posited 4 scenarios. Scenario one is strike to militarily and economically disarm Iran continues. The second is at some stage there is an understanding within the leadership of the coalition, that is United States and Israel, that strikes have failed to disarm and the regime is surviving. I will not come to the consequences. I can do that in the second half of the part, or if you want, I can do it now. And
No,
then
you will do it next later, sir.
okay. Third is the negotiations. There is a push for negotiations. The negotiations are being pushed not only by the two contending parties, but they are also being pushed by the Arabs, also being pushed by the Chinese, also being pushed by the Russians, and also being pushed by the Europeans. So there is a pressure being building up, and then there is a possibility of if some kind of boots come on the ground, etc., of a prolonged low-level conflict that we have seen in the last couple of years in the region continues with periodic strikes, no war, no victory for anybody, but a continuing sort of a scenario carries on. In all these scenarios, there is one factor which will play a very major role is should the new Iranian leadership crosses the Rubicon and decides to develop some kind of a nuclear capability. And I'll stop here, and I'll go further whenever my next term comes. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, sir. You've spoken of a nuclear capability, an interesting thing, and this is going to be a long drawn affair. I'll now request Brigadier Rumel Dahiya, sir, your assessment of the situation and where do you think this war is going? Do you see some kind of end game coming into play, or do you visualize an end game at all at this point of time, or it's too premature? Your views.
You see, the conflicts are decided when one side concedes, or in other words, the other side forces the other side to concede. Couple of things come in this. Merely America declaring a victory or Israel declaring a victory by killing the leadership or destroying the navy, occupying Kharag Island, or any such thing will not be true or will not be complete unless Iran behaves in a manner that it has been defeated and Iran gives up. I'm reminded of this theory of perpetual peace by famous German philosopher Immanuel Kant, who says that wars do not end because the combatants somehow suffer that moral awakening all of a sudden, but because they get exhausted. And this exhaustion doesn't have to be military exhaustion alone. Iran will lose most of its ships. Iran will lose most of its air force. Iran will probably lose would have used most of its ballistic missiles and probably some of the missile manufacturing facilities. But the larger question is, will Iran lose the motivation? After all, the commitment and motivation of the two sides are different. The commitment and motivation of the defender, the one who defends his home and land, is much, much stronger than the motivation and commitment of the aggressor. If I may recall, Soviet Union lost 30 to 40 million people during the Second World War, but they refused to give up. Germany lost as many, or perhaps more. Iran itself lost such a huge lot of young people during the Iran-Iraq war, even when they were gassed by Saddam Hussein's army, that at one stage people will say, will the society survive? But they came up once again. So the question here is, what are the motivations of, and I won't call Americans motivation. America, I think, under the present leadership, their sole motivation more than anything else is hubris, is to just let the world say and admit that here is the greatest power on Mother Earth and here is the greatest leader who can bend anybody to their will. That perhaps explains enough of American commitment here. I think it will be interesting to know as to what Israel's motivations here are. I think Israel doesn't want any viable kind of opposition or viable competitor in the region. Its ambitions have grown, particularly after the last 2 years when it has been decimating Gaza and Hezbollah has been severely impacted. After that, the ambitions have risen further. And they think that they can bamboozle the whole region into their camp. And they think that Iran is the only country which can stop them from doing it. Not only from ideological commitment, but also because of the scientific temper they have, also because the capabilities that they can muster very quickly, and the energy resources, which is a perpetual source of wealth with Iran. So like no one else. So what they want is that Iran must lose all its power that can make it rise against Israeli options in this region. And it's not just nuclear. They want slow dismantling of the regime, of the morale of Iranians, and Iran's sort of motivation to ever confront Israel for a long, long time. They know that all by themselves they can't do it. So, what is the best strategy for them? The strategy for them is to involve United States into this adventure or misadventure, whatever you call it, so that they can slowly dismantle gradually in a rolling collapse of Iran, so to say. That Iran, keeps collapsing from one stage to another. Now, this attack on 28th February, some people say, including General Petraeus was saying on the television, that probably it was an opportunity target, an opportunity where they got the information that 40-odd commanders are going to meet the Supreme Commander. And they struck at that particular time. But was it the right decision? Perhaps it was a wrong decision. Supreme Leader Khomeini had become very, very unpopular. Old, frailing man, in any case, very sick, may not have continued for very long. And the society was divided. So, like Sahgal said, these attacks have somehow brought about some modicum of unity in the society, and it has rallied behind the flag. Now, if you apply games theory to the whole situation today, it is not a military versus military battle at all, a war now, because the military capabilities are asymmetric. They are unequal. By choosing the targets of their choice with air superiority, air dominance, let us say, not even superiority, quite a lot of damage can be done to Iran. It has already been done, and more can be done. But the question is, Iran simply wants to hang on, and it wants to increase the cost for America to do it by making them spend more, and letting this pain spread across the region and beyond. Let the economic hardships be felt by the world, and let all of them blame United States. Now, as far as China and Russia are concerned, obviously it goes without saying that they would want America to be entangled into this war for a long, long time so that it loses its potency, loses its war. But more importantly, it is not just material support that they need to give. They can apply the games theory in other manners. Supply chain disruptions, for example, causing reputational loss to the American power, causing dissensions within the American political system, where a large section of the society starts sort of questioning Trump's wisdom, as it is, as if you are reading every day now, that the Trump's cabinet is under severe strain. One minister, Naomi, has already been sacked. Mr. Hegseth is not having a great day under the sun. Mr. Marco Rubio has gone quiet all of a sudden. So they are not having a great day in any case. And the president himself is being called out regularly for making intemperate statements, speaking in a very bad manner. And now putting a bounty on the heads of so many people over there. I don't think anybody considers that as civil act. Anybody considers that as a strategic kind of a thinking. It's all thrashing around and all this. So the question now is, when will America feel the heat that it cannot sustain the war at this level, and therefore they need to quit? Now that's what Iran would like to make America do. They would force them to quit on their own by sustaining greater amount of damage and not giving up. So it's a question, therefore, is who can take more pain, who can continue for longer? This is a war of attrition, and in this war of attrition, the one who has a greater staying power will probably ultimately force the other to concede. I'll come down to the other part later in the second part as to what could be the likely outcomes of this.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. I think all of you have given a point of view, but let me put a few facts across your opening views, and we could develop on it. What has started as a military to military confrontation, as was said earlier, has degenerated into something else. I wouldn't say degenerated, it has taken a turn. Today it's all about oil, global energy security, and through the Strait of Hormuz. And Iran doesn't have much capability to hit either the Gulf countries, rest of the Gulf countries, or America beyond a point. It only has today, very militarily speaking, it has some drone capability. It has got some missile capability. As to how much it can do is a question mark, but it the only thing it has is the Gulf and the oil flow through the Gulf control. If that goes, Iran goes. That's a proposition I'm putting across. It's not necessarily true, right? The second thing is if USA has to open up the Gulf and the opening of the Gulf and opening up the Strait of Hormuz will give succor to the economies of the Gulf countries, right? In which case, USA has to put boots on ground, either at Karg Island or north shore of the Strait of Hormuz, something. Because after all, they're now indicated that over 2,500 Marines are coming in with USS Tripoli, which is amphibious ship with a fighter capability and everything. So this war is going in like what General Gautam Moorthy said. It is escalating. It is not end game is not in sight. It's possible that after whatever happens in terms of the ground forces insertion, whatever happens, certain amount of end game will start playing out. By then, someone will start saying, "Okay, enough is enough. Let's get this thing." That's one way of looking at it. The second thing is we need to look at what are the outside powers who will egg this war on or pull this war back, because a lot depends on that also. You look at China. China initially helped Iran, but in doing so, it has gone against itself. Right? It might be strange, but I think suddenly China realized that look, the oil flow has stopped. Oil flow is stopping. The prices of oil have gone up, and China has been hit. So helping Iran doesn't is was counterproductive to themselves. And then they were hitting all the Gulf countries from where China was drawing oil, and China had BRI interests out there. So the whole thing, I think, in my own view, China is virtually out of the game, right? Except where they're talking and all that, they'll talk. And they'll want this war to finish. The Chinese motivation is that they want this war to finish. Of course, they want the war to finish with, USA uh, being,
Diminished.
seemingly small. You look at the Russian viewpoint, Russia would love this war to go on because it's got off sanctions, oil trading at 50, $100 a barrel, a premium from where it was selling $50 to India and $40 to China. All of a sudden, it's just doubling its thing, and more of Russian oil is coming into the pot, right? To balance the global situation. I think Russia is laughing its way to the bank, and they would love this war to go on, and they would also love USA to get stuck in that. On that, they have no this thing. USA would like to get out of this earliest, and they want to finish off and get out of this earliest. So would Iran. Look at it. Iran also would like early exist with the stable regime. Only thing is, they have their pride in their way. They have to swallow the pride if they have to give in. If they continue with the pride, they'll continue to the last Iranian. They have no choice, and the IRGC has no choice. But it is very clear, like it was brought out. Regime change is out of the equation. As far as the Gulf countries are concerned, the Gulf countries are also in a catch-22 situation. I mean, if I sum up what you all have said, the Gulf countries are in a situation where if America goes, they are vulnerable to Iran, even if it is weakened. So they don't want America to go. And till America is there, this war doesn't end. So they are caught between pushing America out or not. Their economy also now hereafter will depend to a large extent on the American presence out there. To think that some other power will come and bail these countries out is out of question. If America leaves this place tomorrow, the Gulf countries will fold up in front of Iran. That's my guess. That's my own opinion. And they have no choice in it. So I don't see the Gulf countries ejecting America out. So given this kind of conditions and the fact imminence of boots on, I'd like you to build a scenario as to where this boots on ground will go and how do you see this going through. I mean, any way you look at it, and whether we will see an end game in which this regime survival takes place or not, or will America have to tuck its tail between its legs, declare victory and get out. Right? Declaring victory and being victorious are two different things. We all know that. So we are just throwing up options. Let me put it this way: it's not a fact that you might not be convinced about it. I'm more interested in the options. So with this, General Gautam Moorthy sir, back to you. Your views and what are the options you see going ahead?
Thank you, General Shankar. Before I put my views across, I have a hypothesis which I would like to put across to Brigadier Sahgal, my Guruji. He mentioned that if Iran gets uh, a nuclear weapon, even a small nuclear weapon, it will be a game changer. My hypothesis is that there will still be space for conventional war, as India has shown during the recent Op Sindoor. Despite Pakistan, we have called out Pakistan's nuclear bluff. Iran is not suicidal. I mean, they may be steeped in the Shia martyrdom concept, but they would not take the whole country down with it, because if they know if they use a nuclear weapon, I mean, they will be obliterate. So this is the hypothesis I'd like to put across, sir. I'd like your views subsequently on this, please. All right, now back to your question, General Shankar. What do we see as I started off? What is an Israeli victory? What is an American victory? What is a regime victory? And what is a victory for the Iranian people? Are they compatible? I mean to say, the regime victory and the Iranian victory, people's victory on one side, and Israel and US victory on one side. Israel states that its war aim is to remove an existential threat. From the beginning, they say that the last 50 years they've been at it, and we want to remove this. They get the head of the octopus, which is what they were talking about. In fact, in our last CASA discussion, we had mentioned this also. As far as Mr. Trump is concerned, he says we want a compliant government in Iran, unconditional surrender. We've heard him on TV, we've seen him. And that tells us about that the coalition itself, although they may be on the same track, but the aims are not identical. If you look at what Israel actually desires, it means complete elimination of a military of the Iranian leadership. For them, the center of gravity is the Iranian leadership, this present leadership, and they want it out. They also want to eliminate the nuclear threat, but the question that I raised for Brigadier Sahgal, sir, please, if you could dilate a little on this. They don't want missiles coming in as far as possible. The naval threat, they want to counter, and your viewers will know that Iran has an Iranian navy, and the IRGC has its own navy. While the Iranian navy is a conventional navy, the IRGC navy relies on speedboats, ships, hitting, low cost, high result kind of a scenario. Now, what happens to Iran if the leadership today is decimated? That is not of Israel's concern. They have very happily lived with an Iraq which is no longer a threat, Libya no longer a threat, Syria no longer a threat. So they don't really care what happens inside Iran as long as Iran is no longer a threat. Now, that is the aim they'll be working at. They're not bothered about the political future of Iran, but they just want to see that they are not threatened anymore. Look at America, I've already told you. US does not want a free Iran to declare success. It needs a weak Iran. It needs to control Iran's oil resources, oil and gas resources. It needs control of the Strait of Hormuz. It needs that energy leverage. We're very clear what happened in Venezuela, and Iran was the next. And they would rather ensure that Iran remains within their sphere of influence. For them, that will be victory. So, but for the regime, it is very simple. All they need to do is to survive. And all the speakers today have brought out, including you, General Shankar, that for them, the country is united behind the Islamic Republic. And even those who wanted to see this regime gone, much like Israel, if you see before 7th October 2023, Netanyahu was skating on very thin ice. There were huge protests. They wanted him out. But moment 7th October happened, the whole nation rallied together. It's the same state in Iran, and I dare say it will be the same state in any other country. So it only needs to preserve its core. Leadership will keep getting decimated. The second leader, Mojtaba, also from what one has heard, is in a very serious condition in the ICU. There'll be a third leader, there'll be a fourth leader, there'll be fifth rung of leadership. The mere continuation of the Islamic leadership of the Islamic Revolution is a success for Iran. So a ceasefire, if tomorrow Trump decides to blow the whistle and call it off, Iran has won the war. And they will put it. No. So war is to enforce one's will on the enemy. So destruction, is it the goal? If US and Israel have not compelled Iran to bow to their will, US and Israel have not won the war. I'm making it very clear. It is not the same thing as defeating them militarily, mowing the grass that Israel keeps talking about. It's not the same what you do with his Hamas or Hezbollah. This is completely different. It's a new ballgame altogether. So how does one see this end? And I was sticking my neck out to say that the US is going to walk away, both declaring victory. Iran will declare victory. Israel will have to be content with some bruising that they have done on Iran and a lot of bruising that they have taken themselves. Ultimately, what will be the victory for the Iranian people? I'm afraid the can just got kicked down the road even further. Victory for them looks further away. Thank you, General Shankar. Back to you.
Thanks a lot, sir. Victory for them looks further away, and what you're described as a stalemate in which everyone declares victory and everyone loses. Well, that's how things are happening. And the attempt of the Americans to force a Venezuela kind of a situation here has actually failed. With this, I'd request General Brigadier Sahgal, sir, your views on it. And I'd like you to war game this issue of the nuclear option which Iran is likely to use, since you brought it up. Over to you, sir.
Okay. So, Gautam sir has raised an important issue. The point, look, we are all discussing that the Americans have the monopoly of firepower, and they can continue this whole campaign to a long period of time. There is a certain degree of let's put it this way, a loss of capacity that is taking place in Iran. At least that's what the presumption is. So if we look at this scenario, and you rightly said, the fact is that if this continues, there will be dissensions within Iran, and we might start looking at some contours of a regime change. Now the scenario is that if that happens, then things will start moving in a very different direction. But the question over here is this. This regime is very clear from the statement made by the new Ayatollah, is very clear that he is not looking to stop the war. He is not going to give in to America. He is in fact asking America to give reparation for all the damage that is being done to them. Yet he is asking for that we need a final settlement. They are looking for a final settlement. So when we're looking at the existential threat, we're looking at it from that perspective. Now, also the fact which General Shankar rightly pointed out, Strait of Hormuz, the leverage of blockage of Strait of Hormuz is a limited time enterprise. It cannot continue indefinitely. Okay, the economic side is going to start playing. So at some stage, the pain of continuing strikes on Iran, the the shift in the economic and the targeting perspective of Iran is forcing the leadership to move beyond the current level of capacities and capabilities and start looking seriously at a nuclear option. And that is where this whole thing is moving to. If, for example, Kharga Island, for example, I can give you a guarantee in next 48 to 72 hours, there is going to be no question of Americans taking over Kharga Island. It is very well prepared, very well, strongly defended issue. But that's not the point. The point at issue is this, is that if equivalence has to be brought into the Middle East, and Israeli nuclear capacities have to be challenged. Then, as per the same game theory which Rumel Dahiya sir was talking about, the issue comes up is that there is no option beyond a point, not on the 15th day, but certainly after another 10 days, 25th day or 26th day, there will be no option but for the Iranians to start looking at assembling some kind of a device, which I have, at least my analysis tells me that they have the capacity, they have the locations, and they also have the plans to do something like of that nature. The point over here is this: is like you very rightly said, that if the Iranian regime continues to hold on, and the American war effort becomes a negative enterprise, that it is not gaining anything, the regime is carrying on, we're just killing people, the world opinion is going to shift. As far as Netanyahu is concerned, we are also looking at the fact is that he is also taking a beating, and Israelis are, for example, are not very happy with the kind of situation that they are presently landing up. So the point which I'm trying to make is this: is that the Americans will have to take a call. How long is long? Do they want to enter into a Vietnam kind of a scenario? And number two is, you cannot occupy a country the size of Europe here. So what is going to happen? Americans land up in. He asked me a question. One or two airborne division, 25,000 troops, 50,000 troops just land up in Iran. They're going to be guerrilla warfare. They're going to be what has happened in. Just take our mind into what's happened in Ukraine. The Russians with such massive forces are moving from village to village. Yeah, they're not there. It's a total attrition warfare. Are the Americans ready for attrition warfare? And if this whole thing continues the way it is going right now, my considered view is that Iran has no intentions of going nuclear immediately. But if the point of pain becomes so unbearable, they would be forced to do this. Now the question comes is, can the internal uprising take place? We all have to understand, go back to Ukraine model again. The fact is that despite all the punishment that they are taking, the nationalism holds. The nationalism becomes a very cementing factor. So under these circumstances, I'm afraid I believe that if the scenario which I was talking about is strikes fail to disarm Iran, and there is no option left, then Iran will go nuclear. And that is the worry that everybody has. Now, on the issue of role of China and Russia, I will not dwell too much, but all I want to remind is that they have a $500 billion contract with them. 60% of the oil of the Iranians still goes to the Chinese. We are seeing a very interesting facet in the Straits of Hormuz, that the ship carriers are now declaring themselves to be Chinese flagships vis-a-vis the American flagships. So there is now a new discerning impact that is taking place, and also under the BRICS scenario, there's a lot is happening, which although it's not part of this our conversation, but a lot is happening, particularly with yuan becoming a currency for selling of oil. There's absolute this thing is that there's no oil will be sold to which is not being sold. Iranians will not sell oil in any other currency except the yuan. So these shifts are taking place. How consequential they are, how impactful they are still in the process of emergence. And we, at this point in juncture, everybody is, let's put it this way, is on a seesaw balance. We do not know which way the balance is going to go, but certainly speaking, is that neither is Israel, US combined willing totally. Iranians are taking a huge beating, but they are holding on to, and Straits of Hormuz remain blocked. And under these circumstances, I feel slowly and steadily we are moving towards in a direction which may not be the best course open for the world. I do not want Iran to go nuclear, but the fact of the matter is, but that is what is being pushed into in that direction. I'll stop here.
Thank you, sir. Brigadier Dahiya, sir. A lot of interesting scenarios are coming up. I would request you to paint a scenario which you see fit.
All right. Let me first answer these two small questions that came up. General Moorthy very kindly said there are 4 parties to this conflict. I would slightly disagree with that. Iranian people are part of Iranian nation today. So we don't count them as a 4th party to the conflict, so to say. That's a narrative which the West would like us to believe, but they probably don't understand how the East works. So there are 2 parties, one party combined, two countries combined, and another country is Iran standing in front of them. See, there is a feeling amongst people to say that in case the war freezes where it is today, then either Iran makes concessions and the sanctions are lifted, but the benefits from those lifting of those sanctions will flow to the victors. And if Iran wins, then of course the sanctions continue, and the country continues to face economic problems. So that's the feeling. Now, from that, if you take it forward, extrapolate, what would Iran want to do? Iran would not like to see this war frozen to be sort of started again after another bombing starting after another 6 months, because it gets nothing out of that. It is perpetually under pressure, under stress. Economy continues to be difficult to manage, and the world at large gets used to those bombing raids, and nothing changes for Iran. Iran has faced sanctions for the last 47 years. It would want to come out of it. 2 options. One, it goes into it concedes Israeli leadership in the region and behaves like Venezuela is forced to behave now. Unfortunately, there is no Rodriguez ready to be anointed, of course. But that is one option. The second option is to make sure that bear some more pressure, stay strong for some longer time, and force America to move out of this region, and then shape the region to its liking. Of course, there are challenges. America is not going to concede just like that. It considers itself the most powerful country, and the leader considers himself to be a leader like no one before him. So therefore, this also becomes a little difficult proposition. Coming to the nuclear issue, you see, sometimes very simple but very logical sort of conclusions come out even on social media. One of the jokes going around is this: one person asking another, why did America attack Iran? He says, oh, they suspected them of having nuclear weapons. He says, if so, why did they not attack North Korea? And the other fellow says, because they know that North Korea has these weapons. Which means that Iran might conclude, like Brig Arun was saying, that in order to stop the wars, stop the attacks on it forever, continuing forever, it is better to possess the weapon once, face whatever repercussions that might follow, but then make sure that it is never attacked again. Now, if you listen to, I was listening to Mr. Aragchi the other day, and he was saying that, look, besides the fatwa that the late Supreme Leader had issued against possession of nuclear weapons, he says our problem is that many countries in the Gulf, whom Iranians incidentally do not consider them as their equal in civilizationally or otherwise, that many of these smaller countries who have possessed the money will start going and buying these weapons thereafter from here and there, and the whole region will be unstable. Now, there is a point there. But if forced into a situation where their survival depends on it, then obviously they will go in for it because they have the knowledge, they have the motivation. And probably, I can't speculate, but North Korea probably will be a very fit example of also testing the weapon for them. So one should rule it out. And at some price, and under certain circumstances, China may aid that happening, may not do it directly, but they can at least pick up the material from here and give it to, take it to Pyongyang and do this. I mean, all these scenarios these are plausible scenarios. These might happen. Okay. Then comes to, let's say, what might happen if this war continues like this? What might happen to Israel? And how Israel's interests might be hurt. You see, the economy is suffering already. 2 years of continuous, employment of large number of people from the factories and putting them into uniform has, of course, caused a lot of havoc to the industry. That's number one. Large number of people have also been killed and wounded. People are perpetually feeling insecure, having to go back to the bunkers on a regular basis. So the economy is going to take a hit in any case. The bigger loss that they're going to suffer is that gradually they're losing the public support in America, which Israelis were, I was talking to some Israelis and they said, America considers us as their 51st state. And therefore, anything wrong going with us or against us, they will take care of it like as if we are part of them. Now, that kind of support is really fraying now. If you see NTG, if you see Tucker Carlson, if you see how Ted Cruz was booed out yesterday from the stage, a large number of people have started saying that that Israel is dictating our policy and Israel is harming our interests. Incidentally, let me make it bold to say that what Israel has contrived to launch these attacks now has caused a lot of damage to the economies of a lot of their friends, we included, and a very, very serious damage. So this kind of a reputational damage, and Israel is going to get into isolation. They're going to be more isolated in the world than ever before. Spain has withdrawn the ambassador. Many others will follow suit. So therefore, Israel is going to suffer a very serious consequence of this war, and they cannot carry on like this. Unless they win it outrightly, and Netanyahu becomes immortal in the Israeli myth, that's a different issue, but I don't think that's going to happen at all. Thirdly, as far as Iran is concerned, losing the war is not an option. And like leadership decapacitation might cause a temporary setback, but even America is unable to decide now whether Mustafa Khamenei is really in charge or not in charge. Now, if Iran can continue functioning rationally and coherently and cohesively, even when the leadership question is open to even to the adversaries, then one can say that there is a tremendous amount of inherent strength in the kind of regime that we have in Iran. it is commonly known that the leadership succession, right up to three levels, has already been put on paper and decided, and everybody knows that if this person goes out, who is the next one who will step in. So I am not a supporter of regime or against the regime, and I have no emotional attachment either with the Israelis or with the Americans or with the Iranians. It is their business how they want to conduct. But logically speaking, this war is a war of attrition, not going to end tomorrow, because there is no leadership or leadership coalition in the world which can really force either of the sides to sort of concede. And for conceding so easiest way of ending the war is one side conceding to the other. Till yesterday, all the Europeans, whenever they said, whenever somebody said that Russia wants to negotiate, they would say, oh, it's very easy to end the war. Let them just pack up and go out. The same argument, if it is applied over here, it is so easy to end the war. Let the aggressors fold up and go out. It's so easy. But unfortunately, their egos, their sense of sort of self-worth is not going to let them do it. So day after tomorrow is a very important day when we'll see as to where the oil prices go. And as somebody was saying, that America launches the attacks mainly on Saturdays because there are 2 days of cooling off before the stock markets open again. So let us see as to what happens on Monday. Where is this economy going? But I'm sure that as far as the West Asian, the Gulf countries are concerned, GCC countries are concerned, you see, if Kurg, they say that he has only decapacitated military targets on the Kurg Island and he has not hit the oil and gas kind of facilities. Why? It's not a mercy on Iran. It's a very clear case that if those oil facilities are destroyed, no oil facility, terminals, or something like that along the southern coast of the Persian Gulf will function for next many, many months. They'll all be destroyed by Iran in retaliation. Iran's whole aim is to make it difficult for America to sustain it. And like I said before, it is by making it costly for America, but also making it costly in terms of reputation and in terms of kind of pressures that America will have to bear from its coalition partners and others. It is by making the coalition fray overall, so therefore, it will be in their interest to continue the war and let America, under its own weight, declare victory in some manner and leave the place. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. A lot of interesting issues have come out. If I have to sum it up, it's very clear. No one will concede in this case. And no one today is in a state to say that I am victorious. Even the Americans can't, declare victory and go. And that is the fundamental thing. The second thing is, as far as opinion is concerned, opinion matters only in USA. In the rest of the places, it doesn't matter. But what I'd like to put out is that, contrary to what we think, Washington Post put out a poll yesterday on it, and there's a swing for the war to continue. Surprising as it may be, from what it was earlier, the more people are convinced that the war should continue and Iran should be subdued. Coming from Washington Post, which is a left-leaning kind of a thing, it's interesting. It's not a majority, but there is a swing. It matters, right? Now, when you talk of the three states which are in war, Israel and Iran, in their own way, are fighting for their existence. We might call of Israel as being they want to control the region. At the fundamental level, they are looking at their existence. And Iran has very clearly said that if I do anything, I will wipe off Israel off the earth. So they fighting a existential battle. Now, with the regime change, the way it has been denuded, Iran is also fighting an existential battle. Both are fighting with their back to the wall, right? In the middle is USA, which is favoring one to start with. How much will the other side push USA out of the way is to be seen. But like all of you have said, This is not the end of the game here. This is not Vietnam where USA can walk away. This is a place of global energy security. 30% of the global oil is come. And Trump's avowed interest is to control global oil for his, larger agenda. So Trump is also not going to go away from here. If not Trump, some other dump will come. He also can't get away from here, and that's the history of this place right from 1947. Ever since this whole story has come up, that earlier the Britishers and then now the Americans have always had their presence in this area and to develop this area, so they'll not go away. Okay. Now, the nuclear option is interesting. I'd like, I go with whatever you have said, but let me put it a little differently or food for thought. If Iran had the capability of excising a nuclear option, it should have done it already, or at least the threat. The moment the threat comes, this whole way the thing is gone would have changed. All Iran had to do is say, look, I'm going to use the nuclear option. And then, you then get
Not
look, sir.
using, possessing the capability and letting the world know that they possess.
All he had to do was say, I have this capability. Sorry, whatever you've done, you've done. I have this capability. Now face the consequences. If he had done that, please, you might not agree. No, please, sir. I'm not saying you'll agree to it or not.
Okay, sorry, please.
I'm only trying to put across a point of view. I'm only trying to put across a point of view. I know what you're trying to do this thing. But the fact is, just think, if Iran had this nuclear capability or the option to use this nuclear capability, all he had to do was declare himself as a nuclear state. The whole game scenario would have changed. That's all. So now, in between, to come back with this nuclear capability is a little, difficult. I'm not saying it's not going to happen. The fact that Iran today has to go and test in North Korea, all these are, I think, too far. It will not affect this whole story immediately. So your point on this nuclear thing, and then I'll go.
After that, I'd like to beg your leaves after that. My only point is, Khamenei had the previous Ayatollah had clearly said Iran will not make a nuclear bomb. He had given that as a diktat. Now the reason why they are talking about this whole issue is the fact is that the new person is part of the IRGC. He understands the dynamics of play, at least in their perception. It's all a matter of perception. Nobody's right and wrong from his country's perspective, and they are going in that direction where they are perceiving that having nuclear option perhaps and creating two nuclear states in the Gulf area would probably be a much better option than simply taking this beating for the sake of it, because like you say, the mowing of the grass takes place. There's one more angle, sir, which is also being discussed, not so seriously on the Indian social media, but it is there, of the possibility which Rumel Dahiya sir talked about, is the possibility of North Koreans supporting this effort, not only in terms of bomb material, but actually providing them a nuclear weapon. This is something which is being talked about. Which is, if you see there is a strategic group which keeps looking at these issues. They are trying to look at this. Nobody's saying it's going to happen tomorrow. It's not happening. But
this is one of the possibilities.
This is interesting that
I go with the fact
a nuclear-capable missile yesterday. They tested a nuclear-capable missile yesterday, and it has happened moment the Patriots were removed from South Korea. Now, please see that. See how the disposition of forces is taking place. So what I'm saying is, I'm not saying that you are wrong or right, sir. I'm not saying I may probably be 100% wrong, but my perception is, having followed this thing, and I followed this nuclear debate very closely, is the fact is that the analytical aspects of gaming these issues indicates that Iran may be forced to take a decision of this nature. I'm not saying he's going to take it. I'm not saying he's going to, but the fact of the matter is that the cards which America believes that it holds all the time, they might be questioned, and this would become one of the serious issues that question
Yeah,
this card.
on that there's no doubt. No, I don't. I'm not saying no to that. Whatever you're saying is on the cards. It's one of the possibilities. Yeah, 1 minute.
I
I'll
only
get to
have
you.
a possibility. I'm not saying it's not
It's
going to
all the
happen.
possibilities. All I'm trying to put across is, you know, but this possibility is in the future. It's not yet
It was
crystallized
not,
out.
sir. It was not a possibility on 28th of February. It was not a possibility on 10th of March. It is a
Today we're talking of it.
possibility 16th of
We're
March.
talking of
No.
it
Okay. Yeah.
further. But
Can I
So,
right now, I agree
so
with you. Yeah, please.
one
Please.
last bit, sir. Brigadier
Yeah,
Sahgal,
I'm here.
sir. You just said that this will change the equation. My point is that India was on the back foot for 25 years, and finally we called Pakistan's nuclear bluff.
Where?
So,
When?
Sindoor, Sindoor.
No, don't get carried away.
No
Don't get carried
equation.
away. You have
No
called nobody's
equation,
bluff.
please.
No, you have not called anybody's bluff. Yeah, please understand that it was a 4-day war of 80
Fair enough.
BrahMos missiles. You do not reach nuclear levels at that level. People are, and also the fact is that gentleman sitting in Washington D.C. has talked 20 times. He stopped catastrophe. So there were forces which had the capacity to control this. Unfortunately, in case of Iran, there are no forces, and the General Shankar rightly said, China does not look itself as a competent player to stop Iran. It is looking at a much larger area of interest. So, in India-Pakistan case, there is a referee all the time. There is no referee here, unfortunately. Who is the referee? That's
Right.
my problem. That's
And India
agree
doesn't
with
face an
I will not
existential
go
threat from
nuclear. I
Pakistan.
agree with you, but that's a Western narrative. Don't get carried away with totally Western narrative. Just look at it from our perspective.
I go with you, sir. I go with, the point is, when we get to that level, you see, the very fact that we're discussing these options, nuclear options, indicates the difficulty for anyone to get into that equation, right?
Yes.
A whole lot of that's a can of worms which is yet to open, and we'll see the indications of that opening, but it's not going to happen in the next 10-15 days. It's going to happen in the future. And for all you know, this war might come to some kind of a boiling point in the next 10 to 12 days. Because beyond that,
I'll be the happiest person, sir. India will start getting gas.
yeah, no, not only sir, because beyond that, the economies of scale, the energy security of the world is at stake, and something will happen. It'll happen. That I'm very this thing. If that doesn't happen, then we are in a big soup. That's a different soup, right? And then we're looking at we spoke of leadership cohesiveness. Leadership cohesiveness today is actually not so great all round, whether it's in USA or in Israel, Iran, right? I mean, let me put this thing across, food for thought again. If Iran had this kind of leadership cohesiveness and they had their complete, command and control structure intact, they wouldn't be saying something and doing something on ground. To that extent, the leadership at the top says, okay, I want to survive, they got the people around and all, but their military is acting differently. You heard Peskashian come up and say, oh, I will not attack others and all that, and he was made to shut up the next day. So to think that, the leadership equation in Iran is settled is also, we'll have to rethink. Because there are huge problems within them. Because we've seen, they said we'll allow Chinese ships to go, and someone, fired at the Chinese ship, and the Chinese ships have not left the Gulf of Hormuz. We're talking of their good friends. So the leadership issue, cohesiveness in Iran is also a little question mark. Similarly, in USA, Similarly in USA, because there's a battle going on. Even there, you see that what Hexet says, you see Dan Kane coming out with a different kind of a story, Trump coming out with a different story. So the I wouldn't say the narratives, but the way they're talking is completely different. And suddenly they've started realizing, look, war is not about conventional. Iran is playing a asymmetric game, completely asymmetric game.
Absolutely.
And he's playing a different game. He's playing horizontal escalation. These chaps are doing it vertically. So
Yes.
there's a polar difference between the two. And where do these polar differences meet is something which we'll have to see. And that's why the debate, which we are all into. And if all of us had to agree, this war wouldn't have taken place. So that's the way.
So with that, can I take your leave, sir?
Yeah, please, right? The way I look at it, USA is in a soup of Israeli making, and it is being cooked in over
Thank
a
you, sir.
Iranian fire. That's the way I look at it. With your permission, can I take some questions? Not many of them because we have already overshot.
I'll leave. I'll take your leave.
Yeah,
sir.
please. Sir. Thanks a lot. Yeah, grateful
Thank you,
to you,
sir.
sir. Right.
Thank
sir.
you very much, sir.
I'd like to thank Pratap Nath for becoming a new YouTube member. I'd like to thank Chandrasekharan also, Chandrasekhar Sharma to become for having becoming a YouTube member. Suresh Kumar also a YouTube member. Vignesh Karthikeyan. He says, "Sir, I don't understand the position of Arab states. Why are they not going on offensive on Iran? Any country which has been hit with hundreds of missiles would. Is their region more important than economy?" Uh, this is a issue which I think many people fail to understand, and many people don't have a concept of why the Gulf states can't, Arab states can't even respond. So I'd request both of you to weigh in. Gautam sir, your view first, and then I'll request General Dahiya to talk of it.
Very frankly, Arab states do not have the military muscle that Iran has. First and foremost, they have some air forces, they have a bit of the army, but they are in no way, and they're completely beholden to the Americans who have bases on their soil. The Americans are fighting the war for them, they're providing support to the Americans. But if you take militarily, they cannot get together and mount an offensive in Iran, it is out of question. It's chalk and cheese. Brigadier Dahiya will.
Yeah,
I think
your view.
The Americans using the bases located on the soil of these countries somehow make them complicit in this attack on Iran. And in whatever language we condemn Iranian attacks, we have done it ourselves because of our own reasons. We have 9 million people of Indian origin staying there. We have huge stakes of trade of $200 billion, about 50 to 60 billion dollars of money coming every year from there, and of course 40 to 45% of our energy resources. So we have taken a stand also. The fact of the matter is, there's no denying the fact that if those bases are used to launch attacks against Iran has a point in saying this. The second issue is this, that the Arab street perhaps is not fully convinced that it is Iran. Iran is at fault. They probably put the blame on the other side. And the third issue, of course, is that although they have a lot of modern weapon systems, probably the best in the world that America has been able to sell or other countries have sold them, but the fact of the matter is they don't want to have an enmity in perpetuity with a country which, as an adversary, will be able to do a lot of damage to them even in future. So I think they are not only just looking at today, they're also looking at tomorrow and beyond. That, I think, to my mind, is the reason why, despite egging on by Mr. Besant, the energy secretary, the economic secretary, finance secretary of US, and others, and of course Lindsey Graham is the provocative chief in chief. Despite that, the Arabs have steadily declined to get into this war themselves.
Well, let me combine both and give you all my opinion, which is important. The Arabs don't have the capacity to fight. Let's be very clear about that. They never fought, right? Even look at Saudi Arabia, their biggest nation wants Pakistan to fight for them. So they don't have the spine to fight. Please understand, they're fundamentally weak monarchies. Strong monarchies or democracies or autocratic, highly autocratic regimes can fight, not weak monarchies. And all these countries are small, weak countries with marginal populations. One. Number two, if America doesn't fight for them, tomorrow they have to face Iran alone. So for that one simple reason, America will not be allowed to get out of this place, no matter how they like America or not. Whether they want America to do or not, also if there's this thing, because today the way the situation is, without America, all these countries will collapse here, and Iran will take over this region. Please, after all, Iran is a civilizational construct. It's a fundamentally a strong nation, which we are seeing today. So to that extent, this is where it is. Their religion, their money, everything is more important to them, and that's where they will be. All this talk, Sunni divide and all is very great till the time they don't have to fight. The day they have to fight, they'll want some sugar daddy around, and that's America.
In any case, Bahrain, Iraq, and Kuwait are majority Shia.
Shias. Bahrain also.
Bahrain.
I just add one point. If you recollect the first Gulf War, 1991 coalition of the willing, all these Arab states had joined together, under the US, and had taken on Iraq, Saddam Hussein. There were Saudi pilots who were awarded for bravery. They flew into, there was an air war, there was a land war, and the Arab states were very much a part of it. But now things have changed dramatically. There is no way, I quite agree with General Shankar and with Brigadier Dahiya, that there's no way that these Gulf states have the muscle or the wherewithal to take on Iran, nor the desire.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Next question is, what happens if GCC fully rejects American bases? This is an extension of the previous one. Unlikely. I don't know whether, Moorthy sir.
Unlikely. They need the protection. They need the protection. They can't protect themselves. As simple as that.
Dahiya sir, your view.
There are rumors, I do not know how true they are, that the Saudi Crown Prince had been egging Mr. Trump on to launch an attack on Iran, to neutralize Iranian power at this time when there were agitations taking place and things of this nature. So there is a certain amount of duplicity. And it is also rumored that the so-called agreement of mutual defense with Pakistan, strategic mutual defense agreement with Pakistan, was also at the urgings and at least and wink and nod from Washington to say, so that Saudis feel a little more confident of this thing. And if you remember, number of times, Mr. Maliki's time and other times, Iraqis have asked the Americans to leave their bases in Iraq. Americans have not moved out. So it is not just that these countries asking America to move out. America itself will probably not move out till they think that these bases provide them equity in the region.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. So we are in a situation to think that something else will happen overnight dramatically in this war won't happen. The only thing dramatic which can happen is the collapse of the Iranian regime. Other than that, there will be nothing dramatic which will happen. Right. Thanks a lot, Hari Reddy, for becoming a member both in P Gurus and in YouTube. And I'd like to tell everyone that, look, this podcast is going being streamed directly to Gunnershot and to also P Gurus. So please do like and subscribe to both the channels. Okay. Right. Then Jigesh Shukla says, India needs to find a way to build energy in every form, nuclear, green, hydrocarbons. Government investment in those routes will boost GDP up to 10% a year. Gautam sir, your views on this?
No, he is absolutely right. But whether it will boost our GDP to 10% a year, I cannot say.
That's
Certainly,
a different
we are
story.
not
That's
the
a
ones.
matter of opinion. But we need to.
But the fact is, we need to build energy. There's no two ways. I completely agree with Mr. Shukla on this.
You
Dahiya, sir.
see, we must understand one thing, that our energy consumption requirements of energy in our country are going to rise disproportionately going forward. And no one source of energy is going to be sufficient. The very fact that 90% of our hydrocarbon resources are imported, unless we find a big field somewhere, for example, if Andaman Sea somehow starts producing a lot of oil and all that, our dependencies will continue. We must also understand another technical factor. We are hearing so much about AI and data centers and all that. Now, the requirement of power and water for all
Is
these
huge.
things is huge, is humongous, is unbelievable kind of a this thing. And not only it is huge, they also require stable power sources. So therefore, the renewables cannot meet that requirement. It is either nuclear or the thermal power that can meet the requirement. Nuclear, we can be self-sufficient if the thorium cycle gets completed. I believe it's still a couple of years, ahead.
3 to
Once
4 years, sir.
happens, okay, hopefully, let's say 3 and 4 years, I'll be very happy. I'll be throwing party to anybody who's ready to come if it comes in 3 to 4 years, because that's going to be a huge plus for India.
No, 3 to 4 years
Otherwise,
is when we get the technology up, and then you can
yeah,
start scaling up. Scaling up will take another 10 years from there.
and the investments that will be required will be huge also. But fortunately, today we have the capacity to invest that kind of money, so we can do that, and private sector can do that also. So therefore, we require all the energy, but we also require nuclear and thermal power going forward. Plus, we also require hydrocarbons, and this dependency, unfortunately, has to continue for long. Hopefully, gradually, it will become a buyer's market, and we will have adequate alternate sources from which we can get these hydrocarbons going forward. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. I'd like to thank Chandur also for becoming a YouTube member. Right. There are a lot of questions and a lot of opinions, and one more has come up. Okay. US infocentric war detects Iranian kill chains forcing blind strikes on static targets. US uses dispersed AC and EABO. Iran launches and capability declining. Hard to see how Iran winning. So he feels Iran can't win. Gautam sir.
You see, the point is what is victory? Militarily, if you are able to resist a powerful force and continue resisting it despite being hammered, that is victory for Iran. Economically, if you are able to continue to inflict pain upon your neighbors and the rest of the world, it's a victory for Iran. So, military victory need not translate itself into a political victory.
Yeah.
What is
The main
war after all? By Clausewitz, he said, war is politics by other
politics by the
means. So,
Okay.
if you want your will to be imposed on the enemy, how are you imposing a will on the enemy by decimating him militarily if you're not able to occupy the country, change the regime, put a friendly regime there? How will you do it?
Okay.
yeah.
Let me just remind you of a couple of things. One, Iran has been under sanctions for the last 47 years. The newest aircraft that they got from outside were the MiG-29s, which Saddam flew them into Iran for protection during Desert Storm, and which Iran, of course, refused to give them back. Those are the latest weapons, aircraft that Iran has. Now, if that be so, and given the civilizational pride that the Iranians have, and the kind of emphasis that they give on education and scientific temperament, you must be sure that they must have been working on alternatives to cover up their vulnerabilities. And those vulnerabilities, therefore, they covered by way of drones. If you know that they have given the capability to Russia to produce more than 5,000 drones a month. And if they have exported this kind of a competence to the Russians, just imagine to Russia, to a much stronger power. How much of competence do you think they have to produce themselves? And if you think that all their missiles and drones, etc., were decimated in the 12-day war in June, July last year, then I think one is sadly mistaken. I think they have studied how America has conducted its wars in Afghanistan and Iraq for a long time, and how America was forced to retreat from there. They've learned those lessons very well, imbibed them, and produced the weapons, etc. All these ACE, EABO, and all this is unadulterated bullshit. Let me say. These,
We'll
these,
leave it at that.
these terms don't mean a thing. So don't get swayed by this. Go by
Yeah.
the real thing. The thing is that
Yeah.
Iranians have been preparing for this kind of a war for a long time. They have adequate storage capacity, plus they have underground factories. So they are exhausting something. Obviously, it is not inexhaustible. Today they can fire 100 missiles. After a month, they may be able to fire 30 missiles. That's okay. But it's not going to stop. It's not going to come to an end. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. All I'd like to say is, you see, Iran need not win to be victorious. Iran can still lose and be victorious. There are a lot of countries which have lost militarily, but yet have been victorious. The prime thing is take Taliban, for that matter, take Vietnam. We're talking of recent examples, so that we'll leave it at that. So don't get too carried away by there's a difference between military victory and a political victory. So we'll leave it at that, right? Right. We've had a terrific discussion, sir, for the past 1.5 years. I'd like to thank General Gautam Moorthy. I'd like to thank Brigadier Rumel Dahiya. And also like to thank Brigadier Arun Sahgal, who had to leave us. And I'd like to thank all of you who have attended this session today. I'm very grateful to you. Please do subscribe to Ghana Short. Also subscribe to P Guru's channel, who are on this thing today, listening to all of us. With this, I'd like to sign off and thank both of you, sirs. Good evening and Jai Hind to all of you. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you.
Shankar.
Thank you very much. Good evening and Jai Hind.
Thank you.